They've You're not going to believe this, but they've actually put little microphones in Norwegian women, and they hear them say, "Ufta." Okay, so some of the things I'm telling you aren't true, but most of it is. So now this is interesting. There can be typically like 100 sperm cells or male germ cells in the vicinity of the egg, and only one must be allowed to fertilize the egg. This is a real horse race because they can get very, very close, obviously, all these sperm, and only one. You might ask, well, what happens if you get two in there? Well, that's called polyspermy, and even before fertilization occurs, then this just breaks down spontaneously. So a polysperm egg will not develop, will not even go to fertilization. Your first problem when the sperm arrives is there's no way on earth you're going to get through that cumulus, that layer of cells and that goop. Impenetrable. There's the end of life right there. Except there's a specific enzyme produced in the sperm head that digests its way through the cumulus. Power and evolution, stroke of luck on that one. You get down to the zona pellucida, and I'm telling you, there's no way on earth you're getting through the zona pellucida. It was an absolutely impenetrable barrier, except there's yet another enzyme that specifically digests its way through the zona pellucida. And then you get down to the egg membrane, and look at the picture here now. The egg membrane is from one human being. The egg is a cell from one human being, the lady. The sperm cell is a cell from another human being, a male. Two different human beings, two different kinds of chromosomes. No way on earth this egg's going to let that sperm in there, which means that's pretty much the end of life right there. Except it does. It's interesting. As soon as the sperm head touches the membrane, there's a quick inventory that basically says, are you really a sperm cell? Are you the same? And have you capacitated? Ah, yes, you forgot about capacitation. You see, sperm are totally incapable of fertilizing the egg unless they've been exposed to certain chemicals in the female reproductive system that have an effect on the sperm that allow it to be capable of fertilization. That whole process is called capacitation. If it didn't happen, it'd be the end of life. If you're an evolutionist, another stroke of luck. But if all of these things happen, the egg basically says, come on in. Now, when it comes in, the head of the sperm, the DNA of the sperm, its nucleus, go inside. The mitochondria stay on the outside. There are mitochondria wrapped around that sperm tail. And that's kind of interesting. That means that mitochondria have their own DNA. And all of the mitochondrial DNA come from our mother, none from our father, because the father's mitochondria get left out. So kind of a little, that's how they come up with this idea of the mitochondrial Eve, you know, that all human beings apparently date back to, this is going to be a huge shock, I hope you're sitting down, but scientists have discovered all human beings appear to have come from one single female about 6,000 years ago. So anyway, here's the nucleus of the male germ cell is now inside the egg. These are the chromosomes from the female. This will complete that last division, and you'll end up with two little nuclei. We don't have fertilization yet. The sperm's inside the egg, but this is not fertilization. You see, if you look inside of a human egg, this is an electron micrograph, inside a human egg, and here are two little nuclei that we call the pronuclei. They're very easy to identify in the electron microscope. They got these little PNs on them. But one of them contains, don't ask me which one, one of them contains the female chromosomes inside a little nuclear membrane. The other contains the male chromosomes. And when those two, we call them pronuclei, When they fuse together and combine their chromosomes, you're back to the double set now, 46 chromosomes, and that's fertilization. Another name for it is conception. And unless you interfere, if you just stand back and let it be, under normal circumstances, this will just continue right on and a baby will emerge from the womb 9 months later. This is the only unambiguous step in development. Before the fusion of the pronuclei, no possibility of a human developing here. When they combine, this is the beginning of a new individual. In fact, the books that we used in the medical school make this point quite nicely. They recognize that life is a continuum and that this is the beginning of a new person, a new individual. Although life is a continuous process, they didn't say since Adam and Eve, but we know that. Although it's a continuous process, fertilization is a critical landmark because, under ordinary circumstances, a new genetically distinct human organism is formed when the chromosomes of the male and the female pronuclei blend in the oocyte. This is from one of the embryology texts that are commonly used in medical school. And this is a good time to just kind of sit back and look at what Scripture says about conception. I think of King David. Boy, what a louse that guy was. I mean, to think he's in the lineage of Christ, I mean, he saw a lady that very much caught his attention. He was probably looking where he wasn't supposed to look, saw her on the roof of a building. Turned out it was the wife of one of his own generals, Uriah. The wife's name was Bathsheba. He wanted Bathsheba, and so David, that louse, actually essentially arranged to have Uriah killed so that he could have his wife. And he did it. He put him in the front point of battle where he knew he'd be killed. He was. He basically said, "Good riddance, I now get his wife." And when this horrible sin was finally brought to his attention so that he faced up to it, he said this prayer: "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity." In other words, when I came out of the womb,